A city surrounded by walls had vast fields and a dense forest around it. Somewhere in the forest, a goblin was sharpening his dagger with a stone. In front of him was a group of humans he had just slaughtered. Not far away, screams could be heard echoing from a mine. The goblin remained silent, waiting for the right moment to enter. With a furious look, he stared at the entrance of the cave, only to reveal a sinister smile. Inside the mine, an injured young woman had been tied to the support beams. In the hands of the man standing before her was her registration card. Jung Hayon was her name, a resident of Seoul. The trio was impressed to discover that she had lived in such a nice place. The group's leader stepped forward and asked if she would listen to them. Pressing the identification card against her, the man said in a fake voice, "I understand how you feel, Hayon. It's pretty ridiculous, isn't it? You were living a perfectly normal life, and then suddenly you fell into another world. You must be shocked." He quickly explained that she was in another world with orcs. All the kinds of nonsense you would see in movies. The man introduced himself as someone who helped newcomers because he had arrived before them. With a malicious look, he recommended that she accept his help, or she would end up like her boyfriend. The man lifted up a severed head, one belonging to someone Hayon knew. The shock was so overwhelming that the young woman fainted, which irritated the group's leader. One of his companions stepped forward, reminding him that he had said the woman would have obeyed if he had not gone too far. The third member of the group grew tired of the way the two were acting and walked away. While the two argued about how they would take the woman back to their base, all three heard a voice. "You guys are so disgusting that I can't just stand by." The two men standing near the woman turned around, thinking the voice belonged to their companion. "Hey, have you gone crazy?" Despite the question, they received no response from the third member of the group, which only irritated them further. "Are you ignoring us, you bastard?" The group's leader was about to grab him when the man tried to open his mouth to call for help. Before he could speak, he fell backward onto the ground with a dagger lodged in his neck. The other two members of the bastard group drew their swords as they came face to face with a goblin. The little one retrieved his dagger and tossed it into the air, playing with it as he approached the group. "You filthy bandits seem to be having fun." The surviving pair was shocked to hear the goblin speak. With an irritated expression, the goblin taunted them. "How about we play a different game today?" The goblin threw two of his daggers, managing to hit both men, one in the hand and the other in the arm. He had tried to strike their vital points, but the pair somehow managed to defend themselves. Thanks to the noise, the young woman, Hayon, began to wake up. Her tear-filled eyes were met with the sight of the two bastards charging at the goblin. The little monster gripped a dagger, waiting for their attacks. The group's second in command was the first to attack, but the goblin managed to duck, avoiding the blow. Moving swiftly, he slashed upward with his dagger. The strike cut deeply into the human's legs, causing him to fall to his knees as he screamed. The goblin acted quickly and finished him off. Seeing his partner collapse to the ground, the bandit's leader was shocked to see him defeated by one of the weakest monsters that existed. Unaware that the woman his group had kidnapped was now awake, the goblin acted as he pleased, advancing toward the bandit with a smile on his face. "I told you we were going to play." The bandit began swinging his sword wildly, trying to keep the goblin away. Desperate, he raised the blade and attacked from above. The goblin quickly leaped to the side and with both feet struck the human squarely in the chest. The goblin knocked him backward, sending him crashing to the ground, and landed on his feet after jumping back. When the man fell near her, the bound woman stared at him in confusion. The man was terrified and crawled across the ground, begging the goblin not to come any closer. He remembered that the goblin spoke the human language and tried to make a deal with him. However, the goblin ignored him, raising his blade to strike before the man could start rambling again. The human was silenced, his eyes rolled back, and his heart stopped beating. The goblin sighed after the exhausting yet brief battle. At that moment, he noticed the woman in front of him. Hayon trembled in fear at seeing a monster from such a close distance. Picking up the dagger he had used to finish off the bandit, the goblin stood up. He walked toward the woman and smiled mockingly. "Looks like you're the only one left, aren't you?" Having been freed, the woman rubbed her sore wrists. She tried to speak to the goblin, asking if he was Korean as well. The goblin frowned and asked whether he looked Korean or even human for that matter. The woman had her reasons for thinking that. You speak our language and you know what an identification card is. You also saved me. Checking the coins the bandits had been carrying, the goblin ignored her, stating that he had not saved her. The young woman did not care about his reasons, only about the fact that she had been saved. Pleading, she asked him to explain what was happening. The goblin reminded her of what those bastards had said earlier. Both of them had been living peacefully in their own worlds when they woke up in the world they were currently in. Hearing about another world over and over again, Heian started crying once more, begging him to explain. With a smile, the goblin said that she should have already seen it by now. He stood up and asked her, "Don't you see anything? The quest or something like that, what are they asking you to do?" The young woman was confused until her eyes suddenly widened. Holographic windows appeared before her. Seeing her surprise, the goblin burst into laughter. "Oh, so you can see them." He told her that she could adapt to this other world by completing those damned quests to earn rewards. He turned around, intending to leave her alone. "Go ahead and fight for it." The young woman tried to stop him from leaving, asking for more explanations. Seeing her grab his arm, the goblin gritted his teeth in irritation. He drew a dagger and grabbed her by the hair, frightening her. Pointing the dagger at her, the goblin warned, "Listen carefully, you naive fool. I am the most dangerous thing here. So what else are you expecting from me?" He warned her that from that moment on, he would kill every human he came across. Leaving her alive was nothing more than a simple whim. The woman started crying again, sobbing through her words. Why? You're the one most capable of helping us." The goblin wondered why he would help humans. He remembered his previous life. At a campsite in the middle of the rain, he held the body of his beloved Seulgi. He had been an ordinary human, living through the most desperate moment of his life. No matter how much he begged, Seulgi would not open her eyes. A female knight approached, and the young man glared at her with fury. That was supposed to be the holy sword, Hayuri. With a trembling voice, the young man reminded her, "You promised you would help us. You said you would help us live well in this other world. But why did you do this to us?" Hayuri ignored his cries and drew her sword, declaring, "What a pity! You completed your mission excellently. This will be a noble sacrifice." With a cold gaze, she pointed her sword at him and pronounced his sentence. "However, since you killed an ally, you will meet your end as a traitor." The young man roared in fury, for it had been Hayuri's subordinates who had attacked his beloved. "I was only trying to stop them. You took Seulgi away from me and my unborn child." In the middle of his words, the young man was struck by the holy sword. He fell to the ground and Hayuri withdrew her blade, ordering, "Silence, traitor." As he choked on his own blood, the words Hayuri had used against him continued to echo in his mind. His sorrow and despair turned into fury, into curses against humanity. He made an oath, a promise. "If I can destroy all of you with my own hands, I will pay any price." Remembering his past, the goblin smiled, both mockingly and with contempt. He decided to reveal to the woman why he would not help her. "I hate humans. I despise them. I am no longer one of you." The goblin looked at her and declared seriously, "Because now I am a green skin." After suffering Hayuri's attack, the protagonist felt as though he were drowning. He got to his feet and discovered that he was in a lake. Confused, he wondered how he was still alive. The young man immediately remembered Seulgi and wondered where she was. He looked at his own body, and the shock hit him. Beneath him was a large magical summoning circle. He had no idea what was happening. He looked at his own hands, unable to understand what he truly was. Looking around, he saw a monster holding a staff and wearing the skull of a beast on its head. The creature continued chanting the summoning spell. The protagonist looked at it and somehow was able to understand the monster's language. The large goblin introduced himself. "I am Mork Zu, a warrior shaman." The orc pointed at him. "I will give you a name. From this moment on, as a member of the goblin tribe, your name will be Gorls." The protagonist frowned, surprised to be given the name Gorls, as well as to be referred to as a vessel. As he began living with the goblins, Gorls was praised for being able to strike human vital points with such precision. One of the goblins examined the body of one of the humans and commented, "Such skill in battle, just as expected from my man." The goblin archer ordered everyone else to wait. She declared, "Mev is going to meet with Gorls." Gorls was currently inside the mine. He looked at the human woman he had saved and told her to leave before he changed his mind. Heian begged him to let her go with him, swearing that she would do anything he wanted. Gorls thought she was crazy. "You want to stay with a monster who killed people right in front of you?" The girl, however, still held on to her original opinion. "You're not a monster." She recalled how the trio of bastards had claimed they would help them, only to kill her companions. Yet he, the goblin, had saved her. That proved it was far better to trust monsters than humans. Desperate, she began crying again. "Who am I supposed to trust? You're the only one." Giving the woman a light tap on the forehead, Gorls tried to get something through to her. "Listen, Miss Sunshine, this is exactly why you ended up in this mess. Because you trust people far too easily." Shouting at her, Gorls tried to make her understand the situation. There isn't a single person you can truly trust. Remembering where they were, Gorls warned her that she had been lucky not to be the first person summoned to that region. There were several human camps nearby. He hoped she would find people more trustworthy than he was. Gorls handed her a bone dagger. Heian asked what it was. Gorls warned her, "You'll have to pay the price to join." To a group of survivors, whether with favors or with someone's life. He pointed to the dagger, recommending that she hide it well because if she ever found herself in a situation like the one she had been in today, it could save her. After giving his advice, he prepared to leave, warning her, "If you speak to me again, I will no longer spare you." The human, however, stopped him once more, pleading for him to at least tell her his name. The goblin sighed, replying, "Kim Taesung." "No, now I am Gorls, the great vessel." Gorls. While Gorls searched through a box of items, Mev approached, saying she had heard that a human had escaped. She asked if Gorls had let the human go. Gorls looked at her without answering. With her green face slightly flushed, Mev stated that the human possessed one of his daggers, even though she herself had not received one. The Black Moon Clan goblin archer seemed to be jealous. Gorls looked away, explaining that eliminating weak humans was not worth his time. Mev became even more enamored upon learning that Gorls wanted to fight powerful humans. As expected, truly the man worthy of Mev. Changing the subject, Mev asked how powerful the holy sword was, the one he had once mentioned. Upon hearing that name spoken, Gorls' expression turned to fury. He stood up, warning, "Mev, it's not simply because she's strong." Gorls looked at her, declaring with his deepest feelings, "I want to destroy her, because she was the one who took my world away from me." The goblin was startled by the intensity in Gorls' gaze. Whether it was the reason Kim Taesung lived, or what he most wanted to protect, everything had been taken from him. Gorls still remembered. "As if that weren't enough, they also took my life." He spoke with irritation, frightening Mev. "For some reason, now that I have returned with this appearance, I no longer have anything holding me back." Mev pressed her back against the wall as she backed away in fear. Standing before her, Gorls swore, "If I can destroy those bastards, I'll pay any price." Mev looked away, frightened by the enraged goblin. He roared madly, "Everything they took from me, I'll make them pay for it." Tears welled up in the little goblin's eyes and she fell to the ground after stumbling backward. The protagonist finally realized the state he was in and quickly regained his composure. The little goblin scolded herself, stammering, "Mev is scared. Why is Gorls acting like this? It's scary when my man gets angry." The protagonist apologized, saying he wasn't angry with her. Sighing, he slapped his own face and told Mev to gather the others, collect everything, and offer the items to the shaman. Mev nodded, and with her cheerful smile restored, ran out of the cave, shouting to the others, "Hey, you lazy greenskins, get in here and start working." While the goblins gathered everything, Gorls climbed to the top of a large rock. From there he could see the entire forest. He looked toward a particular path and saw the human he had saved running for her life. Ignoring her, he opened the quest panel. The whispers of the Moonlight quest required him to hunt 30 humans. 29 had already been eliminated. The reward was evolving into a goblin warrior. Ever since he had evolved into a goblin fighter, Gruels had felt himself growing faster and becoming stronger. He believed that becoming a goblin warrior would make combat even easier. Suddenly, someone called out to Gruels. Excited, Mev reported that they had finished gathering everything and asked what they would do next. Gruels warned that some humans had escaped during the attack, so reinforcements should arrive soon. Exuding malice, he revealed his plan. Let's turn this place into their grave. Inside the mine, constant pounding could be heard. The goblins quickly moved the crates filled with items. While overseeing everything, Gruels warned Mev to be careful with the items. A goblin ran into the tunnel calling out, "Chief!" The goblin reported that they had finished placing obstacles along the path, just as the chief had ordered. Gruels thanked him for his hard work, but stated that he wasn't anyone's chief. Even so, the ordinary goblin continued to address him as chief. The goblin revealed that he had seen Gruels fighting the humans and acknowledged him as their chief. The goblin looked back at the others, asking, "Don't you all agree?" More than 10 goblins cheered, recognizing Gruels as their chief. Mev touched Gruels' shoulder. "I recognize him as my man too." A goblin assigned to keep watch ran into the tunnel, warning that the humans were gathering at the entrance. Confident in facing what was to come, Gruels ordered everyone to hide. Lastly, he asked Mev to assist him. Holding her bow with a determined look, she showed that she was ready. With everything prepared, Gruels declared, "Let's let the party begin." Outside, a little over 10 humans had gathered. They found bloodstains outside that led into the mine tunnel. The group's leader, carrying an axe, trembled with rage when he heard that everything had been caused by a single goblin. He grabbed his subordinate by the shirt, shouting indignantly, "Are you an idiot? Do you think I'm going to believe that nonsense?" The subordinate stood by his words. "You're only saying that because you didn't see him. That tiny bastard was flailing around like a badger and massacred absolutely everyone." The mercenary captain gritted his teeth, cursing his useless subordinate. He threw him to the ground, no longer intending to look at his face. The captain called over a subordinate named Hongjai and ordered him to take the boy and capture the little goblin he had mentioned. He wanted to see with his own eyes whether the idiot brat was telling the truth. Hongjai turned to the rest of the team. "You heard him, right? Let's capture him alive." While Hongjai was still speaking, an arrow was fired at him. The mercenary fell to the ground in front of everyone. The team's leader was startled, unable to understand what had happened so suddenly. The young man who had brought the information pointed toward the cave entrance. "Chief, look! The goblin is over there!" Mev fired another arrow, striking the young man in the leg and making him fall to the ground screaming. The little goblin looked at the group and mocked them. "Stupid humans." With those taunting words, she ran into the tunnel. The squad captain shouted furiously, "What are you all staring at, you bastards? Hurry up, catch that bastard and bring him back alive." The group quickly rushed into the tunnel. Mev ran while looking back, deliberately luring them in. As she ran, the goblin began to jump, as though she were avoiding something. While chasing the little goblin, the humans failed to notice a line stretched low across the ground. Mev reached Gruels, warning him that the humans had arrived. The protagonist thanked her for her good work. Now they could head for the other exit. Mev followed him enthusiastically. The group of humans ran together while their leader stayed behind. The mercenary carrying the axe gritted his teeth as he cursed, "Damn it, our entire base was completely looted by a mere goblin. This is humiliating. I can't tell anyone about this." The group chasing Mev finally reached the line stretched close to the ground. In the darkness, they failed to see it and ended up tripping over it. The thin line snapped the moment someone touched it. The group leader, who had remained farther behind, examined the tunnel. He noticed several small piles of mud, stones, and wood, as if they were obstacles set up by the goblin. He couldn't help but sigh. The goblin using his brain seemed smarter than his own subordinates. Curious, the human crouched down and reached his hand toward one of the mud piles. He brushed the surface with his hand, noticing that there was something underneath. As he cleared it away, the human discovered a box. Written on it was something difficult to read. Explosive gunpowder? While the group leader was reading the label on the box, a subordinate ran up to him. calling for him to come and see something. The man didn't let him speak and shouted, "Get out of here now!" The subordinate was confused by the order, but before he could react, an explosion occurred. Fire surged through the narrow passage, spreading throughout the entire tunnel and engulfing everything in its path. Every human inside was caught in the blast and vaporized. The only human who survived was the one Mev had shot in the leg, as he had never entered the tunnel. Rocks and debris flew out of the tunnel toward him, but he managed to survive. When the young man looked toward the tunnel entrance, he saw that it no longer existed. Everything had collapsed. At the other exit, Mev stared at the entrance with her mouth agape at the sheer size of the explosion. However, she noticed that Gorls was standing still, as though something had happened. A magic circle appeared beneath Gorls, and a powerful energy flowed into his body. His human kill count had reached 30. As a reward, he evolved into a goblin warrior. Gorls' body was completely transformed. He grew larger and his muscles expanded, making him taller. Radiating confidence, he smiled. "I can feel an unprecedented sensation rising within my body. So, this is what it feels like to become stronger?" Meanwhile, on the other side of the mountain, the man who had been struck in the leg by Mev's arrow had already bandaged his wound. He smiled in relief at having survived, for he had warned his companions that the goblin in the tunnels was not normal, yet they had ignored him. As he celebrated, the human heard a voice. "Oh, to think there would actually be someone who managed to survive the explosion." The man immediately turned around, coming face to face with a young goblin warrior. Gorls looked him up and down, looking down on him with contempt. "What are you, a cockroach?" Holding a dagger in one hand, Gorls grabbed the man with the other. He placed the dagger near the man's neck and warned him, "If you want to live, answer my questions with absolute honesty from now on. Otherwise, you'll become my dinner." Far from the mines, a man surveyed the surrounding area. Beside him stood a flag bearing the emblem of a dagger surrounded by flames. From atop a watchtower, the archer could see the entire forest stretching along the river. The survivors' camp brought back old memories for anyone who had once lived in one. The place seemed unchanged even after 10 years. Standing beside Gorls, Mev asked if something was wrong. With a map in hand, Gorls found the task ahead much easier. Advancing as far as he could while hidden in the tall grass, he planned to return to Lord Mokzul, the great shaman, and report what they had discovered. Gorls had only one objective. "Let's gather all our comrades so we can launch an attack." The human who had been shot in the leg by Mev appeared behind him, asking Gorls if he would let him go now. The man pointed to the camp, stating that he had shown its location on the map, and demanded to be released now that he had fulfilled his side of the deal. Folding the map, Gorls agreed. "A promise is a promise. I'll let you live." The human became excited and confident enough to insult the other goblins. "Get out of my way, you idiots! Your chief let me go." As the human walked away through the open swamp, the goblins laughed at his innocence. They didn't even wait 5 seconds before attacking him from behind. The human was struck in the same spot where Mev's arrow had hit him, and the pain made him scream. But the goblins covered his mouth and threw him into the water, all of them jumping on top of him. Gorls corrected the agreement. "I'll let you live, but I can't make any promises about the actions of my companions." Thus, Gorls left no witnesses behind. When they returned and revealed the information to Mokzul, the shaman asked whether Gorls wanted weapons and reinforcements to attack the human camp. Kneeling before the leader of the Black Moon clan, Gorls explained that the number of humans was small and that their vigilance was low during the day. Confidently, he declared that if they launched a surprise attack, they would have a solid chance of victory. The orc, seated on his wooden throne inside the cave, thought for a moment. Suddenly, a shout echoed from the entrance. "Lord Mokzul, you must not grant his request!" Gorls looked back, frowning slightly. "Goff, a hobgoblin of the clan," reminded the leader. "Shouldn't we be focusing on preparing for the great chief's next summons?" The dry-mouthed hobgoblin stopped beside Gorls and reminded them that the great chief's summons would require a long and arduous journey. They needed to conserve their strength and resources from that moment on. The shaman considered the matter. It was true that they were already at that time of the year. However, there was no justification for refusing Gorl's request either. Enraged, the hobgoblin tried to belittle Gorls. He's just a mere novice who has only recently become a warrior. We can't afford to waste precious resources and troops on someone like him. Remembering that the hobgoblin's name was Goff, the protagonist issued a challenge. Why don't you come with me and help save those precious resources and troops? With a provocative smile, he added, "Of course, that's only if you have the courage." The hobgoblin gritted his teeth, irritated that Gorls dared to question his abilities. Confidently, Goof accepted. "Very well, I'll show you." At that moment, Mev, Mokzul's granddaughter, skipped through the tunnel leading to the chief's chamber. Grandpa, is my man Gorls here?" It was at that moment that Goff challenged Gorls to a duel. Mev was surprised as she had only caught part of the conversation. Gorls accepted the challenge. "I accept, but on one condition. The loser will hand over everything he owns to the winner." Mev was even more shocked upon hearing him. Mokzul sealed the challenge. "Then, by my authority, I approve this honorable duel between Goff and Gorls." It did not take long before Goff and Gorls stood facing each other in the goblins' arena. In the small stands, several dozen goblins waited eagerly for the duel. Excited, the goblins cheered, each one rooting for their own champion. One of the goblins who regarded Gorls as captain desperately asked Mev why he was fighting Goff. He begged her to stop him somehow. Mev gritted her teeth, unable to help. She explained that it had been Gorls who had brought up the duel, and now there was no turning back. The shaman and tribal chief called for everyone's attention. "I, Mokzul of the Black Moon Clan, will oversee this honorable duel. Goff and Gorl shall not use weapons or magic, and the duel will continue until one of them surrenders or loses the will to fight." A tear rolled down the goblin's eye as he asked Mev what they were going to do. Captain Goof possessed a surprise attack. He was worried that, because of it, Gorls might not even make it back alive. While Mev wondered what to do, Mokzul announced the start of the duel. Immediately, the hobgoblin roared, increasing his physical strength as an aura enveloped his body, and shouted boldly, "Come on, brat!" He charged toward Gorls, intending to prove that he was still a weakling, despite having become a goblin warrior. A punch was thrown at the protagonist, who, maintaining a calm expression, easily dodged it. As a counterattack, Gorls delivered a high kick straight between the hobgoblin's legs. Goff dropped to his knees, clutching himself between the legs, his face sweating more than if he had been sitting in a sauna. Gorls did not stop and drove a punch into him. With the second blow, the hobgoblin fell to the ground. Silence and astonishment spread throughout the arena. Everyone left speechless by the swift outcome. Goff seemed to come to his senses and tried to get back up, encouraging everyone, for he had not yet surrendered. Positioning himself in the hobgoblin's blind spot, the protagonist asked if he had no intention of surrendering. Before the hobgoblin could answer, Gorls locked him in a rear naked choke. Goff quickly ran out of breath and moments later lost consciousness. The protagonist released him onto the ground, delivering his verdict. "You may have a strong body, but your techniques are garbage." This time, victory was declared for Gorls, bringing celebration to part of the arena, especially from Mev and the subordinate goblin. Mokzul declared Gorls the victor and stated that he would grant his request. The protagonist thanked Lord Mokzul. As he prepared to leave the arena, Gorls heard someone approaching. Mev leaped forward to hug him, while the other goblin also came over. The goblin was overflowing with excitement. "That was amazing, Captain! I honestly didn't think you'd be able to defeat Goff," Mev agreed enthusiastically. "See? Isn't my man incredible?" The goblin had made up his mind. "From today onward, I'll be the captain's loyal right-hand man." Mev made a vow of her own. "I'm going to Gorl's room tonight." Of the two vows, the protagonist felt embarrassed by the second one. The old shaman entered the arena and approached the trio. He called for Gorls, who stepped forward to hear him, with Mev by his side. The shaman struck the ground with his staff, and the tip of the weapon glowed with magical energy. A massive dark portal appeared behind Mokzul. Gorls was surprised by the sudden appearance of the magical portal. Scratching his beard, the old shaman said, "Step inside for a moment. There's something you need to see." Gorls nodded and followed the clan leader through the portal. The interior of the portal resembled a vast castle, red walls and a tiled floor. After passing through the portal, Mokzul led the way. They headed to a room where there was a table, a chair, and another portal. From the golden portal of light, another person emerged. Gorls was surprised, not expecting to see such a being. Long ears adorned with golden hoop earrings, a well-toned body with orange skin, and a smile accompanied by a gentle voice. "It's been a long time since we've seen each other, old Mokzul." Gorls approached the table where the goblin woman had taken a seat. Resting her elbow on the table, she listened to the story and became excited. How amazing! That is literally the most entertaining thing I've ever heard. The golden-eyed goblin smiled joyfully and gave Gorls a thumbs up. Immediately, through magic, dozens of books appeared floating above them. The goblin woman looked at the books and declared that they were her collection. The short yet epic story she had just heard would become an absolute treasure. With a movement of her fingers, the goblin effortlessly controlled the books. She stood up to get a closer look at Gorls, completely obsessed with him. She even skipped around excitedly. "Man, it's been such a long time since my heart has raced like this." That's it. The protagonist remained silent, merely watching her. Inwardly, he wondered, what exactly did that psychopath find so amusing about my past? I really want to kill her right now. Sighing, the protagonist asked if he could simply take one of the weapons and leave. After a brief moment of confusion, the goblin remembered why she was there. "Oh, that's right. You can't leave empty-handed." She climbed onto the table and crawled toward Gorls, declaring that she wasn't going to give him just a single piece of equipment. Touching his chin, she revealed, "I'm including a special bonus gift, my masterpiece." Climbing down from the table, she told him to follow her. She walked toward the portal through which she had arrived. On the other side, she would show him what she had prepared for him. On the other side of the portal was a library. The goblin historian continued to recite, "And so Taisung met his end at the hands of a human he trusted completely." Man, I never get tired of this part. No matter how many times I hear it, it's simply the perfect tragedy. The protagonist stopped in front of her, staring at her in silence. Gorls had been given a complete set of clothing, along with a light suit of armor beneath it. Unexpectedly, the title of Clan Master had also been passed on to him. The storyteller looked at him. "Now you really look like a true Clan Master. Shall we go?" Looking at his new equipment, the protagonist believed he was finally prepared. He could feel even more power flowing through his body than before. The yellow-skinned goblin stood up from her chair and began walking around him. Claiming that her instincts were never wrong, she instructed, "Now pay close attention while I explain the benefits of everything I've just given you." Gorls remained silent, simply waiting. Outside, the summoned survivors' camp was quietly observed by Gorls after he emerged from the magical portals. Standing atop a large rock, he remained silent, surrounded by the other goblins. Gorls drew a sword from his waist. He pointed it toward the human camp and commanded, "Begin the march. It's time for the hunt." Dozens of goblins armed with clubs began advancing. Within minutes, the invasion reached the survivors' camp. A human assigned to watch duty climbed down from the tower and ran toward a cabin. He shouted urgently, "Captain, we're under attack!" Startled, the human captain asked if it was a raid by bandits. The man, panting heavily, replied that it was a goblin invasion. The unexpected answer made the camp captain raise an eyebrow in doubt and confusion. Dozens of goblins had stormed through the main gate, charging toward the handful of guards stationed there. Gorls watched the invasion, recalling the gifts the goblin inside the portal had given him. The first gift was a redistribution of kill count. Every human eliminated by one of his team members would also count directly toward his own total. With their superior numbers, the goblins managed to bring down several of the human warriors. Gorls could already see the kill count rising. As her second gift, the goblin snapped her fingers and presented him with 3 options. Gorls was impressed when he saw the quest screen. The goblin historian explained that he could now open the quest menu whenever and wherever he wanted, free from any restrictions. The clan quest Gorls had received required him to eliminate 40 humans. 25 had already been killed. He couldn't help but smile. Actually, doing things I only saw in web novels feels so surreal. The goblins wielding iron clubs attacked ferociously, paying no attention to defending themselves. Just as a human warrior was about to be struck, a sword intercepted the goblin's attack. A swordsman managed to protect his companion, killing the monster before him. When the first of their comrades was slain, the goblins halted their advance. The man who had claimed the first kill against the goblins shouted at the camp members, "What the hell are you all doing? Have you really lost your minds over a few worthless goblins?" He raised his sword and ordered his comrades, Put them back where they belong. Show these pathetic little pieces of trash what happens when they mess with humans. The human was in the middle of his speech when something flew from the entrance of the camp and struck him in the face. The dagger thrown by Gorls had hit its mark perfectly. Annoyed, Gorls cursed, "Who the hell are you calling trash, you worthless bastard?" When they saw their captain fall, fear spread through the hearts of the humans. The warrior standing at the front of the group began to tremble, unable to believe what had just happened before his eyes. He no longer cared about fighting and turned his back, trying to flee, because he knew those were no ordinary goblins. One after another, the human survivors began to run, trying to reach the rear of the camp. Gorls watched them flee. He mocked them, calling them idiots, then looked back to check on his companions. The goblins gathered around him, impressed by Gorls' complete control of the battle. To them, the humans had now become a joke. Every one of them was running away with their tails between their legs. As he watched them, the protagonist remembered something the goblin had asked him. "Have you thought of a name for your own clan?" Ever since that moment, the question had remained in his mind. Gorls walked over to the leader of the humans and retrieved the dagger embedded in his body. Addressing all the goblins, he shouted, "You were incredible today, my green-skinned brothers." Surrounded by the goblins, Gorls declared, "Today is the day we are reborn as true warriors under the banner of the Black Moon Clan." Whether it was Mev or any other goblin, they all supported his speech. Gorls continued to inspire them. "We used to hide in the darkness and run from everything in our path, but today we finally crushed the humans." With great determination he roared, "From this day forward we will accept nothing but victory." Raising his weapon, he gave them a name. "We are the Blood Dagger Clan." The cheers of dozens of goblins echoed throughout the entire camp. When Gorls met the yellow-skinned goblin again, he revealed the name he had given to his clan. She liked the way the words sounded, but puzzled, asked why he had chosen the dagger. Drawing upon his memories, Gorls revealed that his very first kill as a goblin had been made with a dagger. The goblin shivered, liking the choice even more. Changing the subject, Gorls asked why she had gone so far to help him. Shrugging, she revealed that she simply wanted to know his story. Epic stories were always the ones that sold the most. Throwing herself into a chair, she relaxed. The yellow goblin's mind wandered as she thought about epic stories. She loved them, especially the ones that involved betrayal. Gorls frowned slightly as he listened to her. She pointed at the protagonist, declaring that while listening to him, she could feel a glimpse of the rage as well as the despair he had experienced. Leaning back comfortably in her chair, she said that she was now looking forward to hearing the next chapter of his story. After letting out a quiet sigh, Gorls thanked her. Because of her, everything had been much easier. The yellow goblin burst into laughter, saying that he didn't need to thank her. "As soon as your story is finished, I'll have earned enough money to cover 3 years' worth of ink expenses." Waving goodbye to him, the goblin wished, "May everyone's hunt be successful, Clanmaster Gorls." Time passed. Along the river that cut through the forest stood the 13th Guard Unit, a small fortress. A letter had arrived at the outpost. Notice, due to the frequent attacks by groups of goblins, all guard units have been ordered to reinforce their security. The letter had been sent by Captain Galen Hans. Slamming his hand on the table, one of the unit's leaders shouted, "Are they idiots or what? You've got to be kidding me. Are they seriously shaking in fear because of goblins?" Lee Sang-jun, a warrior in his 30s, had no fear of the warning he had received. The messenger explained that, according to the rumors, these goblins were not ordinary. They even used tactics like ghosts. Lee Sang-jun grabbed the letter and crumpled it. He threw it at the messenger, cursing him. "Idiot! Then why the hell would the goblins stop if this one's acting completely on his own?" The man insisted, saying that half of an encampment had been completely wiped out by the goblins. The unit leader didn't care and blamed the people in the camp for being completely useless. Claiming that he was above them, the man crossed his arms and came to a decision. "Fine by me. This looks like my great chance to finally make a name for myself in this world." The man asked what he was planning to do. Looking at the letter, Sang-jun revealed his objective. "I'm going to wipe out every last goblin. Inside the fortress prison, a plate of food remained untouched to the point that flies hovered over it. Sitting in the corner of the cell against the wall was a woman. Lee Sung-jun walked over to the cell to check on her. Jung Ha-yun, you haven't touched your food again. The woman didn't even look at him as she replied, What? Were you trying to put something in it again? You disgusting bastards. The unit leader looked at her with contempt, asking where she had inherited such a filthy mouth. Haeyeon didn't bother to give him a proper answer. Maybe from your mother. Hearing that, Lee Sang-jun flew into a rage. He shook the prison bars as he cursed at her. We've done everything we could to take care of you, and this is how you treat us? In a place like this, a girl like you is absolutely nothing. The unit leader became so furious that his face turned red as he shouted, We just wanted to have a little fun, but you actually pulled a knife on us? Where the hell did you learn to have that kind of attitude? Haeyeon remained silent, ignoring him. The unit leader made a decision and called over one of the guards. He ordered that when the goblin hunters arrived, they were to take her with them. The guard mocked Haeyeon, saying that she would serve as bait for the goblins. When night fell, Haeyeon found herself tied to a stake in the middle of the forest. Beneath her, concealed by fallen leaves, was a large net. The net covered a wide area large enough to capture dozens of goblins. Hidden among the bushes, several men lay in wait. One of them noticed a foul smell and asked what it was. Another explained that they had placed tree sap in dishes. This would help dull the goblins' sense of smell. The curious man frowned. And this is supposed to attract goblins? Any idiot would know it's a trap. The expert told us to do it this way, right, Mr. Goblin Hunter? His partner smiled, teasing him for being so nervous, and asked if he was really a hunter. Grinning, he looked back and asked the third person with them whether the trap would actually work. An old, overweight man with a scar over one eye nodded. All the preparations have been completed. First, the coins we scattered along the trail will lure the goblins straight here. The skeptical hunter smiled and admitted to his companion, I guess money really does work for attracting goblins. However, the smiling hunter turned back to the old man. But will all this junk actually work? The old goblin hunter answered confidently, Every necessary preparation has been completed. First, he intended to use the coins to lure the goblins along the road. As for the necklace the girl was wearing, it carried a special enchantment that attracted goblins. Furthermore, with a human woman left completely alone out in the open like this, from a goblin's perspective, there was absolutely no reason not to be drawn to her. The doubtful hunter finally began to trust the old man. As the two younger hunters laughed together, the old man suddenly made the atmosphere much heavier. Yes, her body will make for delicious meat. Bringing up something so disgusting ruined the mood of the conversation, and the other two hunters turned their attention back to the trap. 4 hours later, a goblin found a coin. He held it up toward the moon, amazed that he had found a human coin. The old hunter noticed the goblin's presence and warned the younger hunters. Stay alert! They're about to make their move! More goblins approached the first one and noticed even more coins. Stupid humans. They dropped all their money. Unexpectedly, Gorls was among the goblins. The moment he saw the woman tied to the stake, he recognized her. His eyes met Haeyeon's and she immediately began to cry. Gorls was surprised to find her again. He walked past the goblins who were collecting the coins and approached her. A glimmer of hope appeared in Haeyeon's eyes, but Gorls looked at her with contempt. You really seem to enjoy being tied up, don't you? Gorls walked up to Haeyeon, unable to believe she had ended up in this situation once again. At once the hunters raised their crossbows. They prepared to take aim. The old hunter instructed the younger ones to aim for the legs, as they needed the goblin chief alive. When Haeyeon saw Gorls approaching, she became frantic, trying to tell him to stay away, but with the gag in her mouth, she couldn't say a word. The protagonist continued approaching, making sure she recognized him so she wouldn't be afraid. The moment Gorls pulled the gag from her mouth, Haeyeon shouted, You shouldn't have come. This whole place is a trap. Seeing the woman in tears, Gorls replied with disdain, I already know. The protagonist pointed in several different directions around the forest. From one of those directions, a group of goblins led by Mev advanced. attacking the hunters from behind. With arrows, clubs, and daggers, the goblins quickly overwhelmed them. With everything going according to plan, Goruls confidently declared, "It was the humans who fell into our trap." Hayon stood there wide-eyed, still unable to understand how the goblin had turned the situation around. 3 days earlier, Goruls had visited a farming village. At the village chief's house, the goblins had subdued several guards, forcing them to their knees. The protagonist addressed the elderly village chief. "Sell us your rations quietly and no one gets hurt. Don't make me repeat myself." The old woman handed over 4 sacks of potatoes and carrots. With a questioning look, the protagonist asked if that was everything they had. The old man pleaded for mercy, explaining that the guards had already collected their taxes, and those few sacks were all they had left. The old man looked at the small amount of food, declaring that it was the only thing preventing his family from starving. Goruls looked back at the guards who had been subdued by his subordinates. Were those bastards really trying to steal this from you? Can they even still be considered human? The food before him didn't seem sufficient to feed Goruls' squad for even 3 days. In the end, he took out a few gold coins and handed them to the old man. The old man was confused when he received the money. Picking up one of the sacks, Goruls said that the old man could keep the rest and use the gold to buy whatever he needed at the markets. The old man was even more astonished. That amount of gold would be enough to feed his family for half a year. On the verge of tears, the old man thanked him profusely. "Thank you very much, Master Goblin." Goruls sighed, asking him not to call him master. One of the goblins holding a captured guard asked his chief excitedly what they should do with those pieces of trash. The order was clear: kill them. Parasites don't deserve to live. The order was carried out in an instant. The 2 guards were executed, frightening the villager's family inside the room. The protagonist carried the sack of food outside the wooden house. As he stepped out, he noticed something pinned to one of the walls. Setting the sack down, he tore off the paper. It appeared to be a notice. "We are currently recruiting experienced goblin hunters in the region. Those who answer the call will receive a reward and exemption from taxes." Goruls couldn't help but laugh at the audacity of those bastards. Mev ran excitedly toward Goruls, asking if he had already organized all the rations. The protagonist told her that everything had already been prepared, and showing her the notice, explained that the local guards were planning to hunt them down. Thinking about how he could have some fun, the protagonist asked Mev to gather the best scouts. With complete confidence, Mev replied, "Leave the mission to me. I'll never refuse my man." On the night they rescued Hayon, the goblins ate carrots. Under the cover of night, Mev carefully watched Goruls' actions. The protagonist sat beside Hayon near the campfire. The woman desperately ate a hot potato. Tears of happiness streamed down her face as she was finally able to eat. Goruls told her to eat slowly and chew properly or she would choke. He pointed out an undeniable fact. "You really are the unluckiest person I've ever seen." After swallowing a piece of potato, Hayon asked, "Are you absolutely sure I shouldn't come with you? I'll do anything you want me to do." Hayon broke down crying again, for she no longer wanted to live like a stray dog. Goruls repeated what he had already said, insisting that it was impossible for her to come with him. The rejection left the human even more desperate. "Then you never should have saved me from that hell in the first place. If you had just left me there to rot, I wouldn't be begging like this." Goruls had lent her a hand not because he pitied her, or at least that was what he tried to convince himself. There was no way he could act as that girl's bodyguard forever. He needed to sever his ties with her once and for all, right then and there. Gorul stood up and declared, "You're right. All of this was my mistake. From now on, I'm staying out of your affairs. You're on your own." At that very moment, Hayon grabbed his leg. The determination in her eyes was unmistakable as she demanded, "If that's the case, then kill me here and now." Goruls was taken aback by the senseless request. Hayon stood up and walked toward him as she shouted, "I'd rather have it all and now than be caught by that piece of trash, Lee Sang-jun, and be humiliated all over again." Hayon ended up saying something that caught the protagonist's attention. He told her to wait a moment and asked, "Lee Sang-jun, are you talking about the warrior Lee Sang-jun from the 13th Guard Unit?" Confused, Hayan asked whether the goblin knew the guard. The protagonist began pacing back and forth, one hand on his chin, deep in thought. He revealed that he knew the man, knew him very well. Gorls was able to describe him. He's a man who keeps walking this world, despite not deserving to live. Information was the most important thing now. The protagonist asked how long she had been imprisoned at the 13th Guard Unit. Revealing that she had been held there for several days, Hayon asked why he wanted to know. Gorls told her to recount everything she had seen and heard during her time there. Only after that would he decide what to do with her. While Gorls was dealing with Hayon, a goblin absent-mindedly plucked the petals from a flower. With a gloomy expression, Mev sat silently on the trunk of a tree. Gorls approached and called out to her. Instantly, her expression brightened with joy. Gorls made a request. "Bring me a handful of our fastest and strongest fighters." Mev grew curious and asked if he had a plan. With a smile filled with malice and confidence, he revealed, "I'm assembling an elite squad to completely annihilate that guard unit." Inside the small fortress, one of the rooms had a nameplate on the desk bearing the name Lee Song-jun. The man was alone, enjoying his free time, when someone burst into the room, throwing the door open in panic. The guard urgently reported, "Captain, it's a major situation." Song-jun nearly jumped out of his chair and told the man to knock next time. The guard didn't have time for that. He pointed toward the window and told the captain to take a look. Lee Song-jun wondered what the hell was going on. Outside the fortress, several guards had been found dead. Flies crawled over their corpses. The guard who had summoned the captain explained that after checking the identification tags on the bodies, they discovered they belonged to the men who had gone goblin hunting the previous day. As for the rest of the squad, no one had been able to establish contact with them. The captain covered his nose with his hand, unable to endure the stench before him. The scene was so horrific that he couldn't keep down what he had eaten earlier. Lee Sang-jun immediately commanded, "Hey, Lieutenant, double the number of surveillance guards right away, and send an urgent request to headquarters for a full subjugation squad." The captain of the 13th Guard had recognized, "These creatures are definitely not the ordinary goblins we usually face." A memory surfaced. A man witnessed another being publicly sentenced. Around his neck was a sign stating he had been condemned for serious crimes and hostility against a group of summoners. He was Lee Song-jun. Eating dried meat, our protagonist in his past life already knew that man would end up like that sooner or later and felt no pity. Today, Gorls stared fixedly, remembering exactly what he had seen that day and what that man's fate should be, and wondered to himself, why is he still alive? The next day, at the 13th Guard Post, Lee Song-jun had his hands on his head, in despair, asking himself what was happening. To him, goblins were only supposed to serve for gathering experience. They were the weakest creatures among all low-level monsters, yet they were managing to challenge all humans so relentlessly and boldly. Irritated, he slammed the table, bellowing, "Lieutenant, did you send a message to headquarters asking for a containment troop?" The man affirmed that they had already sent the message by carrier pigeon. Amidst that peace, with pigeons flying over the immense forest, right below was a small wooden house. Inside, Gorls was equipping himself with some climbing gear, confident that with it he could climb anywhere. It was then that, on the wall, he found something peculiar. There was a goblin head on display with a smile and a cruel look. Gorls narrowed his eyes with a certain disgust. Right below, the hunter was tied up, trembling. Gorls showed him a coin, commenting that it was the price for the trouble he had caused earlier. The man was left without understanding. But what surprised him most was seeing Gorls put another amount of coins on the table, stating that the rest was for the climbing gear. "Now we're even! You understand what I mean, don't you?" he said, with a firm look. Without blinking, the man, in despair, nodded his head, confirming that he did. Thus, Gorls left the house. At that very instant, Mev approached excitedly, stating that she had already prepared everything he had asked for. The goblins accompanying her were also excited to be part of it, all in the name of the Red Dagger Clan. "We won't let you down, boss," they bellowed. Gorls stroked the head of the small goblin, who was pure dedication, thanking her for the good work, and then instructed, Mev, when the sun sets, take the rest of the youngsters and attack the front of the guard post fortress to distract them. Next, he threw some clothes to the two goblins in front of him and asked them to get dressed. They didn't even understand what those were, but with firmness, Gorls declared, from now on, you are the first commando unit of the Red Dagger clan. Night had fallen, and several shots were fired on the wall while humans shouted, we're under attack! Bells rang and several people ran, while others prepared their defense tools. Mev was the one leading them, ordering, fire! One of the guards ran up the stairs amidst the turmoil of the attacks and opened the captain's door, shouting, it's an aerial attack from the goblins! Lee Sang-jun immediately ordered, immediately close the fortress gates and mobilize all troops to the walls. Then he sat down, tense, listening to the confusion outside. He knew those weren't ordinary goblins. They had never heard of this species attacking a fortress, and the mystery of that situation made him apprehensive. Lee Sang-jun slammed his hands on the table, full of anger. Damn it! Now that we've reached this point, we have no choice but to resist until the containment troop arrives. But one thing still gave him peace of mind. There's no way these damn things can scale the walls. Shortly after, a hook latched onto the walls, startling one of the guards who was at the location. He looked down curiously but was soon caught off guard. After being hit by a thrown blade, he fell completely neutralized. Gorls was the one now on top of the wall. All the guards protecting the area had run to the front, distracted by Mev's attacks. The goblins accompanying Gorls also began to clear the wall and, with a relentless look, stated, Boss, we're ready too. Heek! With a satisfied smile, Gorls declared, very well, boys. Let's invade this place all at once and get out of here. And so they advanced with the captain as their main target. All the guards they met along the way were neutralized by arrows from their crossbows. They managed to reach the location where the captain was and began climbing the stairs silently until they found a guard in front of the door. The man was irritated by all that commotion, just because of creatures like goblins, but without expecting it. He ended up caught off guard. Gorls immobilized him after the attack and threw him to the side to get him out of the way. Goodbye, you idiot. Lee Sang-jun shuddered upon hearing the noises coming from the hallway, until a heavy impact against the door caused it to give way completely. Lee Sang-jun immediately drew his sword, standing on guard and calling out for his lieutenant. But the one who answered was Gorls. That voice is familiar. They stared at each other as Gorls entered the room. But seeing your face is a real shock. Lee Sang-jun was confused. In reality, he didn't even know who that creature was that could speak the language of humans. But even so, he kept his sword raised. Gorls flashed a wide smile. Well, but that's not the most important thing right now, because I'm sure I saw your end. His face shone along with the memories of his 2 lives as he greeted him. Hello, Sang-jun. Gorls began having flashbacks of his memories from that moment. The screams were deafening in a cave where he and another man ran desperately for their lives. Tae-sung, we're almost there. My lungs are burning from all this running. Damn it, Shin Dae-ho said, completely exhausted. Our protagonist looked back, telling him to stop complaining and keep moving forward, and so they bolted. When Shin Dae-ho looked back, he saw level 2 monsters. They were goblins with a rat-like appearance, which made him despair even more. I hate this with all my strength. Run faster. Who would have thought that bastard Lee Sang-jun would abandon us to be wiped out by monsters? But hope began to rise in his eyes. Right ahead, the exit was appearing, and Tae-sung urged his companion to hold on tight as reinforcements would be arriving. Gritting his teeth, he made a promise to himself. Next time I meet Lee Sang-jun, I'll finish him off with my own hands. But unfortunately, he never had the chance to fulfill that promise. Today, facing Sang-jun stood Gorls. There are a few things you need to answer for. This isn't exactly the best place to talk. How about we go somewhere quieter? That was something Sang-jun wouldn't do even in his dreams, so he stated he would stay right there. He was cornered by Gorls' pack, and calmly our protagonist declared, "Then I guess I'll have to neutralize you and drag you there." The man broke into a cold sweat, biting his lips nervously. "You must be kidding. Come on." But with a malicious smile, Gorls continued, "You never treated me as an equal from the start, Sang-jun." It didn't take long for Sang-jun to be gagged. immobilized over Goral's shoulders. He was taken to the edge of the wall and Gorals barked, "Time to fall, you miserable wretch." Next, he threw the man down. The speed was impressive and so was the impact, but something had cushioned the fall. A large pile of straw was at the spot. Gorals descended by rope, while some goblins commented, impressed. A human literally fell from the sky. The boss was right. He actually survived the fall. Holding the man firmly, they began to drag him out of there. Gorals asked if everyone was okay and ordered them to give the signal to Mev. The goblins, excited, sounded the evacuation horn. "You heard the boss. Wrap everything up, just as we planned." On the other side, Mev heard the signal. At that exact moment, she ordered, "Greenskins, stop shooting. Everyone, retreat." And so, everyone followed her orders, leaving the guards on the wall confused. One of the soldiers noticed the evacuation and commanded, "Cease all return fire. Those goblins are retreating." At the house a little ways away, a warm meal was offered to Heian. The old man who had sold the equipment to Garuls was the one offering. Care for a piece? Today it's perfectly aged, so the flavor should be incredible. Heian remained in complete silence, head down. Without much delay, the man placed the plate of food on the floor in front of her, telling her to rest easy as there was no danger whatsoever there. He sat by her side for a few moments and then commented, "I just wanted to thank you. If you hadn't intervened that night, my fate would have been the same as those other foolish guards." She was surprised for a few moments, but soon replied, "Because instead of laughing at my situation, you actually felt empathy for me. I simply couldn't ignore that." Curious, he asked if she was also one of the summoned, which left her confused. So he explained, "That's what they call the people brought from another dimension to this world. The inhabitants here call people like you summoned." She remained silent for a few seconds as that word made sense, but he continued, "From what I know, the summoned usually receive unique abilities through something called a quest. At least that's how it usually works around here. Did you receive anything like that?" She remained quiet, but she couldn't ignore the fact that she had right in front of her a tutorial quest screen. Defeat a goblin. Reward. Awakening of innate ability. They were being watched by the goblins and by Mev. One of them even commented on being curious about what the humans were talking about. Mev, irritated, called him an idiot. What do you think a man and a woman talk about when they're alone? The goblin was left without understanding, but she, completely embarrassed, continued, "Are you questioning my logic? Do you want to get beaten up? I asked if you want to look for trouble with me." They began to argue, and the scene was visible to the humans there. "They really are an energetic group," the man commented. Inside the house, there was loud shouting. Lee Sung-jun was being harshly interrogated. Gorals dealt a heavy blow to the captain's face, who was already showing signs of exhaustion, and insisted that he speak. "How are you still alive?" The man, worn out, didn't understand the meaning of that question. "I'm alive because I haven't been eliminated yet." But Gorals wasn't satisfied. He wanted to understand how the captain was there if, by this time in his past life, he should have already fallen. After some more pressure, Lee Sung-jun screamed in despair, "Enough! Stop this, you bastard! Just ask what you want to know already. What exactly are you trying to figure out?" Gorals approached with a cold look and repeated, "Then I'll ask again. How are you still alive?" The man, already in tatters, shouted, "Are you serious? Asking someone who is obviously here how exactly he managed to keep breathing? How am I supposed to answer that?" Gorals revealed what he knew, stating that he had seen with his own eyes his final sentence being executed in the square. It was the holy sword, Ha Yuri, who personally decreed your end. Sung-jun's eyes widened. "Ha Yuri? Are you talking about the holy sword? She decreed my end? I've never even seen her face. What crazy story are you talking about, you lunatic? Why would she do that to me?" Irritated, Gorals held him firmly, questioning the obvious. "Why? Are you really going to pretend you don't know, you scum? You gathered the summoned under the pretense of helping them, only to turn them into your submissives. And as if that weren't enough, you bargained the women's fate with the big shots. 4 months after fleeing to the western region with them, the holy sword hunted you down and put an end to your deeds." Sang-jun was still reluctant. "What kind of crazy fairy tale is this? I've never even set foot in the western region. It's been little more than a year since I arrived in this world." This left Gorals completely perplexed and confused. He slowly let go of the man's face, analyzing the information. It's only been a year for him? I don't sense any sign of falsehood in his voice. Now that I think about it, Lee Sang-jun is still just a captain, not a commander. What is happening? What piece of this puzzle is missing? Until his eyes widened as he had an epiphany and asked what today's date was. Irritated by the prisoner's silence, he raised his fists. "Say the date, you bastard, and tell me the year too." Weakened, the captain answered between grunts, It's the imperial year, May 7th of the year, 86. The revelation shocked Guruls instantly. He couldn't believe it was still the year 86. He put his hands to his head, processing the temporal shock, and turned to leave, leaving Songjun behind. "Hey, where do you think you're going? If you've already gotten your answers, untie me at once." Goruls stopped, looked back at that human, and approached calmly, remembering the promise he had made in his former life. "I swore that the next time I met that scoundrel Lee Songjun, I would be the one to put a definitive end to him." Songjun called him crazy, begging to be released, but with a frigid glare, Guruls completely immobilized him and neutralized the traitor quickly and silently. The time has finally come to fulfill that oath. Guruls realized that the imperial year 86 was exactly 5 years before his fall, coming to the clear realization that this was not a simple resurrection, but a step back in time. He left the room with a serious expression, meeting Haeyeon and asking if she had a minute to talk. Steadfast, she nodded, standing up to follow him, leaving Mev behind, who was still watching the scene somewhat intrigued. Far away, in the middle of the forest, the two began to converse. "Listen, do you still intend to come with me? I need to make one thing very clear. I cannot promise that you will be safe. You will have to take care of yourself. The path ahead might be much worse than everything you have faced so far. Even knowing this, are you still willing to follow me?" She didn't take long to answer yes, so he asked her to etch a phrase into her memory. "Ka Murgov Narguruls." He explained the meaning behind those words. This human is under the protection of a goblin. Goral stated that from now on she was under his responsibility and guardianship. If she said that, most goblins wouldn't dare touch her. But other than that, figuring out how to survive would depend solely on her. He raised his finger and reinforced, "One more thing. If you change your mind, you can leave whenever you want." She was surprised but deeply grateful for everything. Walking back, she gathered her courage and asked a favor. "Could I wash myself somewhere?" She was completely embarrassed, revealing that it had been a long time since the last time she had that opportunity. Right at that moment, Gorls called out for Mev, who was hiding right behind and got a huge fright, trying to justify herself. Mom, Mev definitely wasn't following you. Mev was just scouting the area." He turned to the small goblin and ordered firmly, "She is under my protective custody. Make sure everyone in the clan knows that." In an improvised spot made with blankets, the sound of moving water echoed through the environment. Outside, the old human was talking to Guruls. "I apologize for all this. I keep staying in your debt whether I want to or not," said our protagonist to the man. The old man affirmed that he had already paid off all the debt and not to worry about it. Looking ahead, a goblin was dragging what was left of the captain through the area, while Goral stated that after this, the situation would improve. "Even if you left him here, I intended to end him myself to use as bait," stated the old man. Gorals noticed a deep resentment coming from him, and then the elder revealed, "I don't know if you know, but there isn't a single person around here who can stand that guard unit. That captain exploited us down to the last penny, charging taxes. Afterwards, the guards would take whatever was left, claiming it was a requisition." He turned to Gorals, revealing something he was reluctant to say. "Those individuals are the main reason I ended up becoming a hunter." Looking at what was left of the captain on the ground, he concluded that as soon as people heard the news, many would celebrate. Suddenly, Mev appeared bringing a few pieces of clothing and calling for Guruls. "The person beside you bought clothes at the human market. Where should I leave them?" He pointed inside the tent and asked Mev to deliver them there. Curious, she asked if he was really going to give new clothes to that human who was under his custody. Inside, Mev was explaining the meaning of the words, "Ka, Morg, Gobnar, Legorals." It meant, "I am the pet belonging to the goblin." And then she pointed to the clothes in the spot, stating that everyone already knew about it. Far away, Gorals needed to organize his thoughts. He had fallen by the power of the Holy Sword, but returned when time rewound. People like Lee Songjun, who should have already met their end in the original timeline, were still alive and well. The truth he was starting to see was clear. Maybe it's just because his time hadn't come yet. A smile broke out on his face, and he couldn't contain his joy at the thought. If it's really like that, that means Sulgi might still be alive. That being the case, he shouldn't worry about the Holy Sword right now. Ensuring Sulgi's survival would be his #1 priority. He fondly remembered the way she used to talk to him, a memory that was soon cut short by that painful scene under the rain. "Sulgi, this time I won't let your sacrifice be in vain," he stated. "If it's necessary to keep you safe, I will change the fate of this entire world. Not long after, what was left of Lee Sung-jun was located by a guard in the darkness of the fortress. Illuminated only by the light of a torch, the soldier recognized the captain. It's hard to be absolutely sure because of the state he's in, but I'm almost certain it's the captain. It seems we arrived too late, he stated to the knights coming right behind. Among them was the flame arrow, who questioned the hostility of that scene. By her side, the spell thief commented, I heard we weren't dealing with an ordinary goblin, but to think he would do something like this. However, he was interrupted by the third member, a sorcerer who showed he had a very bad feeling. We are dealing with an opponent completely different from anything we have faced so far. Focus on retrieving the captain first. The enemy may have left some kind of clue. That man had an imposing appearance and, with a firm voice, added, Everyone, inspect your weapons and check your armor. Today, we will completely neutralize the pack responsible for taking down our ally. That was the legendary Twilight Swordsman. That group was the Containment Squad, formed by 3 knights from the mercenary group called the Ember Hunters. The city had opened its gates and everyone was surprised. If they had returned so quickly, it was because they had found the captain. However, judging by the group's tense atmosphere, he had not returned whole. The newly appointed security captain, Sergeant Kim Han-gyeol, presented himself to receive them. Well, look who returned early. Hello, officer gentlemen. Did you find Sergeant Lee Sang-jun? The Twilight Swordsman broke the news that they had arrived too late. Suddenly, the leader of the group received a heavy bag of coins, while Kim Han-gyeol declared, We added a little extra to the reward originally offered by superiors. The veteran was surprised. After all, they had not fully concluded the search, but with a cynical smile, Kim Han-gyeol stated, You said you found Lee Sang-jun. Then the mission is over. Seeing the group's reaction, he continued, Come on, do you really want to keep investigating just because of a few goblins? How embarrassing. Do you want to spread the word that the security force was overcome by goblins? The veteran gave a restrained smile, but the flame arrow grew irritated. Look at how this guy speaks to our leader. Beside her, her companion asked for calm so they wouldn't start trouble. In the end, the new security captain turned around, taking his leave and asking them not to delve into the matter. The old swordsman remained silent, but held the bag of coins, turned to his companions and raised the bag, showing that payment was already guaranteed. They continued their journey and, at a crossroads, discussed their indignation with the guard's attitude. Those guys from the 13th Guard? Do they think we're just traitors? We're mercenaries. But if that's how they see us, so be it. Spell Thief asked curiously about the extra reward amount, and the veteran informed him that it was only 2 extra silver coins for each of them. Just that? Was that guy all smug over 2 little coins? Fumed Flame Arrow, irritated. But, boss, are we really going to end it like this? You were the one who said you'd never seen a pattern like that before. The veteran remained silent with an apprehensive expression. Hey, Hong Yum, don't you know our leader's way by now? Asked her companion. We're heading out to investigate the private residence area. Isn't that right? The old man confirmed that the case was far too suspicious to ignore. According to the analysis, Sergeant Lee Sung-jun was harshly interrogated before falling. The damage to his body was surgical and precise. Goblins usually attack in a disorganized manner with crude tools or desperate bites. They don't press victims like that. Without a doubt, it was the work of an intelligent creature we've never seen before, or there's someone behind the scenes orchestrating it all. They continued walking in search of an inn, knowing that the best place to start an investigation was where rumors gather. He also wanted to take the opportunity to have a drink, which made his companions complain. You said you were going to stop drinking. He laughed, trying to play it off, but deep down, everyone knew he would find a way to get his drink. On the other side, in a cave, Goruls invited his new ward inside, as that was where she would be staying for now. Haeyeon was simply delighted. Do goblins live in a similar way to humans? Goruls replied that they didn't, only that he had adapted the place as much as possible for her. That way you can be comfortable while you're here, he commented. She opened a smile, thanking him for that gesture. He continued to show the place. You can sleep over there. As for food, you can choose whatever you manage to eat from what my subordinates bring. She sat on the comfortable bed, getting quite surprised by the care. Goruls turned to her, saying, I don't know how you feel about this, but for now, this is the safest place. However, he soon stopped talking. She had already snuggled up and fallen asleep in less than a minute. He smiled. Well now, she has completely settled in already, and so he left her well covered, resting as she hadn't been able to do for a long time. Some time passed and Goruls was sitting at the table. On top of it, there was a map. He wanted to organize the entire situation. He opened the system screen with his information and saw that he had reached level 6. He was the boss of a rank 9 clan. He decided to analyze his current quests. Survive 100 days as a greenskin. 20 days remaining. Reward, 10,000 gold coins and the unlock of the secret shop. He believed that this currency was something exclusive to be used in the shop. On the screen, evolution points were also displayed. He had a little over 2,000 and needed 30,000 to evolve into a higher species. The options he imagined included Goblin Assassin, Goblin Blacksmith, Goblin Shaman, and Goblin Archer. He reflected, does this mean I'm following the same evolution path as Lord Morksul or Meviof? Gorls had spent his entire life wielding a sword until his end, and of course it made no sense to choose a ranged combat class at that point. He plunged his dagger into the table, affirming to himself, if I want to face head-on the guys I'm going to settle scores with in the future, the warrior's path is my only choice. He had two main targets in mind. One of them had already been neutralized, Lee Sang-jun, and now the holy sword Ha-Yuri remained. With a steady gaze, he thought of Sulgi, even if she were alive. The errors and crimes of the past were something he would never erase from his memory, and each one would have to bear the consequences of what they did. Suddenly, Mev came running in, calling for him and shouting that she had big news. She pointed outside, gesturing with wide eyes until she looked at him with tears in her eyes. Not understanding a thing, Gorls asked what had happened. She burst into tears. Gorls, you lied to me. He truly didn't know what she was talking about, but without explaining almost anything, she turned around stating she was leaving and that she was very angry with him. He just stood there, confused, thinking, hey, you said it was big news. At least tell me what it is before you leave. Realizing that she was actually walking away, he called out to her, asking her to explain what was going on, and grabbed her by the hands. But she, totally angry, shouted, why is the prize sleeping in your bed? Did you two already get together? He was surprised by her sudden reaction and her crying. Gorls, you are my mate. If you're going to be with someone, you should have been with me first. Suddenly, Gorls pulled her into a firm hug, which made her blush instantly. With a calm smile, he said, get together with the human? What kind of nonsense is that? I did no such thing. Still blushing and with small tears in her eyes, she asked if that was true. He, with a smirk, replied with what she wanted to hear. You are my partner, aren't you? So if I'm going to be with someone, it will be with you, Mev. She went completely red, looking like smoke was about to come out of her head. Gorls kept an amused expression as he said that, and then asked, with that said, Mev, what was the big news you wanted to tell me? She widened her eyes, regaining her focus, and let go of his hands, warning, the Ember Hunters? They are looking for you, Gorls. He scratched the back of his neck, not knowing who they were, but Mev quickly tried to explain. They are really dangerous and famous guys. He became lost in thought, trying to understand the name until the penny dropped. Gorls grabbed Mev's shoulders and asked tensely, are you talking about the Ember Chasers? Mev, who had gotten confused when translating the name, affirmed in fright, that's what I was trying to say the whole time. The Ember Chasers! Gorls put his hand over his mouth, genuinely apprehensive about the situation, wondering why he had to face that exact group right now.